Greetings. Now we're here at a sad occasion because from tonight this is going to be locked down. It's sad in one respect because it is a funeral, but on the other hand it's a celebration. So we're going to party a bit. We're going to have a bit of a banquet. We've got our wine. Okay, this may all about somewhere. And then tonight we'll just leave everything and lock the place down, because we are currently in 705 BC in the Phrygian capital of Gourmet in Turkey. Tonight we are celebrating the funeral of King Midas. So let's get the funerary meal underway. So for the main course tonight we're going to have a lamb stew, because that's what they had at the funeral banquet held inside the tomb itself. They had, for a main course, a lamb or possibly goat stew. And so we've got some lamb here, which I've got to obviously chop up. We've got some fennel, we've got some onions, we've got some lentils, we've got some toasted hazelnuts, bay leaf, star anise, garlic and some parsley. And we've also got some stock ready to add to it. And we will of course be adding some wine, all right? Not the red, because I'm drinking that. But how do we know this is what he had? Well, about 50 years ago, excavations on the site of this ancient city of Gourmet, whatever, they discovered a completely intact tomb, and in many ways it was like opening Tutankhamun's tomb. It had been untouched since the day it was sealed, so the day it was locked down. And it's been since subsequently identified, or at the time it was identified, as probably the tomb of the famous King Midas. Now, it's now suggesting that possibly, because of knowing when Midas died and various other things, and the age of things in the tomb and the site nearby where there was the city, that it's possibly not Midas, it might be Midas's dad, Gordio. Alright? But anyway, we'll talk about that a bit longer. So what you're going to need is something that can go in the oven, okay? And we're going to first off start preparing some of our stuff. So that's going to be chopped up in a minute. We want to thinly slice our onion and thinly slice our fennel, okay? Our lentils we'll want to wash. We're not cooking them because they'll go in the stew and cook in the stew, but they'll want to rinse off, okay? And we'll want to chop about 4 cloves of garlic. So I'm going to get going on that, and then we'll come back for a little update. Okay, so I've sliced my fennel, I've sliced my onion, I've rinsed my lentils, I've chopped garlic. Now I've got 4 to 5 cloves of garlic which are going in the main stew, and then I've also chopped a couple of cloves of garlic which we're going to use at the end, all right? And then I've chopped some flat leaf parsley. Again, that's going in at the end. And like I said, the other things you're going to need a lemon. We want the zest of a lemon. That's at the end. We want some star anise, a couple of them, and we want a couple of bay leaves. I've got 3, I think, here, because these are a bit old and dried. I know I'm going to sneeze. No, it's gone off. No, it ain't. It's dusty in here. Okay, they've made this tomb. The king is lying there in his coffin. Okay, he was a male of about 60, 65. He was laying on all these nice purple cloths and everything. And we know this because when they got into the tomb, which I think incidentally is also some of the oldest wood, preserved wood, the inside of the tomb, it was buried in a big tumulus, or whatever you call it, and the wood was all still preserved, and lying there in the middle, the coffin had sort of, most of that had gone. His body was just a skeleton at this point, but you could still see remains of the purple cloth. And there was also some 14 odd like tables which were used as serving and dining tables, and on them was over about 156 different big vessels that contained alcoholic beverages and also food. Now, we know what the alcoholic beverages were, or we can make a good guess, and equally you can make a good guess what the stew was, simply because they, like I said, at the end of this, after they'd all wet, they just left it all and buggered off out. So when the excavators 50 odd years ago broke in, they were like hit with all this stink of all this rancid fat from the leftover stew. Okay, so anyway, my final little task is to take the lamb. Now, they know it was lamb or goat. Tests showed that in the residue, there was about 150 grams left in each of the in the vessels, and from that they did analysis, and they could see that it was either lamb or goat meat. It had been barbecued and then it had been deboned. Now that was partly because of some of the chemicals present, but equally partly from the fact that chemical analysis showed that it had been deboned, but also there was no bones about. Okay, so they obviously didn't have bones in the stew they ate. Other indications showed that there was some sort of pulse, like probably lentils. They could determine some of the like spices, like the fennel and stuff like that, star anise, and so they had a good go at redoing, if you like, the feast. So we've got some meat. We were a bit limited because we're still on Asda at the minute. They didn't have. We will have a shoulder of lamb and cook it on the bone and then take it off the bone. But instead we've got some lamb steaks here. So I'm just trimming these up and cutting them up. And what we'll be doing first, before we actually get the stew underway properly, is I'm going to brown this off in the skillet, whatever you want to call it. Okay, Dutch oven I think they call it, don't they? And then we'll get on with the assembling the stew and a bit more history lesson. Right, so I've put the oven on. The oven's on at about 130, okay, and once we've sort of got it all going in here, it'll then go in there and cook for about an hour or a bit longer. It depends really how much lamb you got and how big it is. Now, we're going to get the oil up to temperature, and then we'll be adding in the meat just to brown it off, and then we'll bring it out. So while we're waiting for that oil to come up, who was King Midas then? Well, actually there were like 3 King Midases, and just to be even more confusing, it appears that all 3 of them had a father called Gordio, or Gordian. Obviously Midas is famous, but before we get into the mythology, Midas presumably had a city named after him, Midaeum, and it's also believed it was a King Midas who founded the Turkish city of Ankara. Okay, Gordio, the father, was famous for the Gordian knot, which again was in sort of Phrygian history. Okay, he also founded a city, Gordium, okay, or Gordian, and that is actually where we are right now at this funeral. So that's about King Midas. So we're going to talk about the one that most people know about. All right. Before we do that, let's just get this meat in there. That oil is just coming up. Okay, so like I say, we're not trying to cook the meat. We just want to brown it off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my onion and fennel in the same bowl, because ultimately they're all going into the stew together. And then I'm going to use this bowl to put the meat in once we've browned it. Just on there. I said to you about the ale and the wine. They've actually recreated, again, from taking samples inside these dried up drinking vessels and submitting them to mass spectrometry and gas liquid chromatography, etc. And they've actually worked out what was in it and supposedly recreated it. Well, this was an American brewery did that, and I do believe, I think it's called Midas Touch or something. You can actually buy it, or used to be able to buy it. But we're on the wine because they drank wine as well. They know that there were traces of honey, wine. We're not putting honey in this one, right? We're going to just put some wine in there, some white wine. As it happens, Italian white wine, not a Phrygian or Greek. Okay, so this is still just cooking, so I'll be removing it in a minute. Right, I'm just turning the heat down, and I'm just going to remove the lamb. Okay, and what we'll do then is we'll give it a sort of wipe out the pan, and we'll then start assembling the rest of the ingredients. Right, so I'm just going to empty it. Okay, it might be easier if I'm holding the pan, so I'll get it emptied. Right, so I've got some fresh oil in the pan, just coming up temperature, and I'm just going to put the fennel and onion in. Okay, and just going to give that a quick toss around in the oil. And what we're going to then do is we're going to put the lid on, and we're going to get the sundial out. Not sundial, right, sorry. No bloody good sundial inside tomb, is it? We'll get an hourglass out, and we'll give it 10 minutes, because our hourglass is quite accurate. Alright, so that's just going to slowly just fester in there for 10 minutes. And then, well, we just have to party while we're waiting for that. You can't see how much I've got in here, can you? Alright, so the sands have just run out. So, what we're now going to do is we're going to now start chucking the rest of the stuff in there. Okay, so I'm just going to lift that lid off. That burn sound when I pick that up, put that back on. So now we're going to take that garlic. I said about 4 or 5 cloves of garlic. That's going in. We've got some bay leaves. We've got some star anise. And then them drained lentils, they're going in. Gonna eat that in a minute. They're just going to give that a bit of a mix through. And then we're going to put the lamb back in. Okay, so in that goes. Get rid of that. Get that mixed in. So, King Midas, most people know him for the golden touch. But do you really know how he got his golden touch? Well, this was all due to the god Dionysus. Dionysus had a school teacher who also was his foster father, who was a satyr, or satyr, I don't know. And that half goat, half man, I don't know. Anyway, Silenus. Well, Silenus, he liked his wine. Just checking, see if I had hairy legs and gut hooves. And what's that there? I don't know, goes in there. And he got a bit drunk and he wandered off. Okay, and then when Dionysus wanted him, he couldn't find him. He was so drunk he just wandered off. Well, luckily, some Phrygian peasants found him and thought, what do we do with this drunken old satyr? Okay, so they said put some more wine in him. So we got 150 mils of white wine. Could use red if you wanted. We're using white because the wife drinks the white, I drink the red. All right. So in that goes, and then we're going to put a bit of stock into it. Okay. Now I've got about 500 mils of stock there, but I'm not going to put it all in at this stage. Okay, because during the cooking we'll be checking on it, and the lentils will soak some of that up, and some of it might evaporate even though they'll have the lid on, and we can top it up with a bit more if we need to. Okay, we're also going to season it at this point. So anyway, there they were. They said, right, okay, what are we going to do with him? Well, someone said, take him to the king, take him to Midas, he'll sort him out. So I took him along to Midas, said, look, we've got this drunken old satyr here, don't know what to do with him. Well, Midas, being a bit wise and that, knew straight away who he was. So he said, right, okay, so I'll look after him. So he took him in and wined and dined him for 10 nights, 10 days, 10 nights. And because he thought, well, you know, I've got to keep him happy because he's Dionysus, his sort of dad, as it were. So eventually, on the 11th day, he thought, I suppose I better take him back. So he took him off back to Dionysus, who was in a place called Lydia, and Dionysus was overjoyed. He thought he'd lost his father-in-law, or sorry, his foster father forever, and he said to him, you've done me a huge favour, so I'd like to do you one back. You can have anything you want. So Midas, being a bit greedy in it, what's the name, said, I'd like that anything I touch turns to gold. Dionysus said, there you go. Off you go. Your wish is fulfilled. So Dionysus started walking home and he saw an oak twig and he touched it. And gold. Okay. Picks up a stone, turned gold. Fantastic. Right. Leave you in suspense now. Right, you may know what's coming. You may not. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to put that lid back on. Okay, and now turn the heat off there, and that's now going into the oven where it's going to cook for at least an hour, and every now and again we're going to pull it out, give it a bit of a mix, and if necessary top it up with a little bit of the stock. Right, so it's in the oven. Okay, me hourglass. Yeah, me hourglass. Yeah, sorry. That you can hear. That's not the hourglass you can hear ticking, because hourglasses don't tick, do they? Well, actually, they're quite big grains of sand. So can't you hear that? Tick, 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 tick as the sand falls down. Being authentic here. So, hey, and I was about to use one of my Pyrex bowls, and old Midas must have touched it. Look, it's gone bloody cold. So I thought, while that's cooking, what I'm going to do is we're going to assemble that final stuff. Okay, now for that, what we're going to need is the zest of a lemon. All right, so I'm just going to zest up my lemon, okay, into this golden bowl. Okay, and I'll tell you a bit more about Midas. So anyway, he gets home and he had this garden, rose garden, which was his daughter's favourite. She loved her rose garden. Okay, and he went along and he touched every blossom, or every bloom, if you like, and each one turned solid gold. Like, can't believe it. This is just unbelievable. I've got as much gold as I want. So he called his servants and said, lay on a feast for me. We're celebrating. Now, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, fortunately they laid on the feast, but unfortunately every bit of food and drink he touched turned to gold. So he couldn't eat anything, couldn't drink anything. Now one story has it that he then starved to death, but that's a bit morbid, isn't it? But there are other stories, okay, they're a bit better. So he was just like absolutely distraught. What am I going to do? Can't eat, can't drink. And then his daughter came in, crying her eyes out. His beloved daughter. Let me just get rid of that zest in there. All right. And his daughter, crying her eyes out, she said, "What's happened to my rose card? All my roses. They're no longer soft and delicate against my skin. And they don't smell anymore." And at that point he broke down, couldn't cope with it. And he realised that this no longer was like a bonus, if you like, this was a curse. And he cursed his wish. And he said, "I wish I never had it." And he went off and he prayed to Dionysus. So while he was doing that, add to the lemon zest those clove garlic, clove garlic. I'm getting confused now. Of garlic into there, which we've also chopped up, and we're going to add that chopped up parsley. So anyway, he went off and prayed to Dionysus and said, "This is a curse, this curse, can you take it off me?" Now Dionysus thought, well, okay, you know, he did me a huge favour. Hang on. He did me a huge favour. He found me my foster father. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to be lenient. So he said to him, "Midas, all you got to do is go along to the river Pactolos and wash in it, and you will wash away that ability." And that's why the sand's all golden, because he washed in there and miraculously he washed away the curse. Well, what he saw as a curse. Actually, what I forgot to add was just before all that, he went to console his daughter, and of course, what did he do when he touched up? Turned her to gold. Now, what we don't know is whether when he washed away this curse, I'm just chucking the 100 grams of toasted hazelnuts in there. What we don't know is whether he actually managed to turn all them other things back. So whether he got his daughter back, I don't know. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give these a bit of a stir up, a bit of a mix up, and then we're just going to add a little bit of olive oil. Okay, we don't want loads of it. It's just basically to get it all stuck together a bit. So from that moment on, he said, "I'm no longer interested in wealth and splendour. I've learnt the error of my ways." And so that's the Midas story about how King Midas had the golden touch. But there's more. Right, so I've had after 20 minutes, I took it out, had a little look, add a little bit of stock. Now I had another 20 minutes. These bloody Fijian ovens are bloody hot. So let's just get this out again. See how we're doing. Oh, don't think we need any more stock in there. Looks like it's all cooking through. We can see the lentils are starting to look a little bit more swollen. Okay, so just give it a little mix. So anyway, I was telling you, old Midas, he's lost his golden touch, and he suddenly says, "I'm no longer interested in wealth and splendour." So he left and went off into the country and said, "I now worship Pan, the god of country, music and good living," as such. So Pan welcomed him. Hang on, just going to shove this back in the oven. I'll reset that from, sorry, I'm going to turn over my hourglass for another 20 minutes. There you go, you can hear the sand falling. So anyway, he goes off and Pan says, I'm just so great at music, I'm a fantastic musician. And he says, I'm going to challenge the god Apollo to a test of who's the best musician. So the mountain god, Tmolus, said, all right, and I'll be the referee, I'll be the judge. Hang on. Can't do it with an empty glass, can you? So anyway, just get me flagon. Because of course, no such things as bottles of wine then, is there? So anyway, Pan starts off and Pan gets his panpipes and Midas says, woo! And Apollo does his bit and Midas says, shit. Pan says, woo! And Tmolus said, first round goes to Apollo. Pan's not happy, nor's Midas. So then Apollo says, right, it's my challenge this time. Gets out his lyre. Then Pan gets out his lyre. And Midas goes, woo, Pan, fantastic, Pan's a winner. Tmolus said, second round goes to Apollo. Now Midas, being mightily pissed off with all this, unfortunately, says, what the earth are you talking about? How on earth can you give it to Apollo? My mate Pan's best musician going. So old Tmolus says, this guy's not right in the head. He's obviously got, and he said to him, you've got the ears of an ass. Hang on, just drop the cough. You've got the ears of an ass. And of course, because he was God, Midas then suddenly had the ears of an ass. So he's a bit hard done by a king. So we'll leave it at that point. Another little bit of suspense. But we're almost there. As soon as that's finished, what we're going to do is we're going to accompany it with some bread. Now, back then, of course, they would have flatbread. Right? We could have done that. But we fancy doing some a different loaf we ain't cooked before. And what we have made earlier is a wild rice, oat and polenta loaf. So I'm going to cut some of that up and that will accompany our stew later. Alright, so that's what's going with our stew. Now if you want it, you could have like a salad with it. Obviously you need copious amounts of ale and wine because we're partying, aren't we? It's a funeral. But anyway, there's Midas with his ass's ears. Now you can wait. Welcome back, my fellow Phrygians. So that's had just over an hour, just about, according to the hourglass. Okay, in the oven. On there. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to turn the oven off, and we're going to put it on top of the hob, and we're going to finish it off on top of there. Okay, I'll cut my bread up for later on. Okay, so this still looking fine, doesn't need any more stock at the moment. What we don't want, we want it sort of like not too wet, but we don't want it dried up. Okay, so I'm just going to put a bit of a flame underneath it. Okay, and we're just going to cook it through unopened so that we do get rid of some of that liquid. I better turn that down, it's all boiling already. That shows how hot the pan is. And remember, this is aluminium, this gets... So I'll tell you, old Midas has got his ears now because he's sort of like got cursed, as it were. So, oh, by the way, when we serve it up, when you get these brown starfish in it, don't eat them, they're star anise. When you get the green leaves in them, don't eat them, they're bay leaves. Alright? So, Midas has got these ears and he's mortally embarrassed. So he put on sort of like a turban on his head. Okay, and he hides the fact he's got these ears. But unfortunately, of course, he has to go and get his hair cut now again. So his barber whips it off. There you go, don't you dare, tell anybody. So the barber says, of course not, sir. Of course not. Short bang size? Oh, mine is. Do you need your ears trimmed? Anyway, the barber just can't help it. He's just thinking, oh, I've got to tell someone. I've got to tell someone. So eventually he just like, I've got to say it. I've got to say it. So he goes out at night time and he digs a little hole in the ground and he shouts in the hole, King Midas has ice his ears! And then fills the hole up. You think, such a relief. I finally said it. So he's happier. I'm going to turn that down. It's really boiling now. So he's happier. And that's it. He's done his bit. But reeds grow up. And when the wind blows through the reeds, you can hear them saying, King Midas has his ears. King Midas has his ears. It's a bit dim, wouldn't you, anyway? So, that's the story of King Midas. And like I say, he obviously died. But the tomb that you can go and visit, you can go, it's open to the public, you can go and see it. And there's a recreation of the tomb with Midas lying in there. He's attributed to Midas, but like I say, date-wise, they now suspect that it probably wasn't him. It was, oh, itch. This gold, you know, shouldn't react, because it's gold, isn't it? Gold's unreactive, but it itches. But anyway, you can go and visit this tomb, and they still call it Midas's tomb, but strictly speaking, it's probably his father's, because date-wise, it just doesn't fit in. So that's your story of King Midas. So what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to try and see if this lamb's cooked, because everything else seems ready. So there's a little bit of lamb. Ooh, I'm not having that bit, it's a bit fatty that bit. Let's have that bit. Alright, so let's just taste it. Cooked. So I'm just going to give this a couple more minutes just to reduce down a little bit more, and then we'll serve it up and we'll do a proper tasting. We've got our bread, and of course we've got to add our gremolata. Didn't tell you what it's called, did I? Just remember that's our toasted hazelnut chopped up. Didn't tell you they're chopped up. I guess you'd see that. Parsley, a little bit of olive oil just to bind it all together, zest of a lemon, and a bit of garlic. Right, that's going to be spread on top, and then we'll be serving it. Okay, so we're ready to go. So turn the heat off. Let's spoon some of my stew out. Okay, I've got some bread there, but for now I'm just going to do a little bit of taste. All this bay leaf there and a bit of star anise. Don't eat the bay leaf, don't eat the star anise. Well, you can try, but you won't like it. So, here we go. It's alive. Get a bit of a kick from the fennel and the onion. Quite a lot of lentil in there, as it were. But overall, very nice. So, there is a recreation of the lamb or goat stew that was served at King Midas's, possibly, funeral shortly before they sealed the tomb up. So, I'm now going to go and feed the wife who's watching Strictly, and I should be joining, obviously, and we will party on. Just realised I forgot to add the gremolata on top. Okay, so there it is. Hazelnuts had a nice little bite, a nice little crunch. I'm not sure you really pick up the lemon or the garlic, because it's quite garlic anyway. But very nice.